Okay, so it is the month of February. It is actually February 2nd. And so because it's the month of February and, that little old holiday called Valentine's Day, I decided what I'm going to do is read romances this month. However, all of them are going to be LGBTQA+ romances. So I'm really excited because I've got a lot of them on my shelf that I want to get to, and so I want to update you all throughout the process, just like I did in my last video, the January miscellaneous reading vlog. But before we go on to all those lovely LGBTQA+, heartwarming, lovely romances, we gotta get a straight romance out of the way. So, this book, The Holiday Switch, is a book that I started reading last month in January, and I think by the end of that video, I did not finish it, so I didn't give you my final thoughts. So I wanted to update you on this quickly because I just finished it last night. Essentially, this book is about two characters who work at a gift shop on this kind of lodge resort place in this town called Holly. And Holly is a town where this very famous Christmas movie was filmed, and so the whole town is kind of Christmas themed, and the resort and the bookshop or gift shop are all based on this movie and get a lot of attraction from tourists. And essentially, there's big events, and this happens over Christmas and New Year's, big events related to drawing in tourists and things like that. And the one character, the guy, is back in town. Well, I guess this is probably his first time in town, but he is staying with his aunt who runs the bookstore, and the main girl works at the bookstore. So hijinks ensue, as I said in the last video, and they kind of initially have a rivalry, but then obviously it's a romance, and so they get together, and actually, it probably would be good if I told you the actual title of the book. It's The Holiday Switch by Tiff Marcello. And so essentially I finished up this book and it was just as cute as I thought it was gonna be. I gave it 4 stars because while it was very cute, I think the ending was a little rushed. It's a pretty short book, as you can see. And typically in romance books, I feel like they always have this, they build up the relationship and then some fight or misunderstanding happens, and then they have to go through and make it up to each other and come back together by the end. So the fight part that happens in this book happens pretty late in the book with only I think there was maybe 20 pages left. And so I feel like that part was just kind of rushed, but it did end very cute and I loved it so much. It was such a fun read and something easy to come home to and just kind of turn my brain off at the end of the day. So now that we've got that out of the way, let me tell you what I'm going to be reading next. So the next book that I'm going to read, starting off this month of LGBTQA+ romances, well, in addition, I guess, to Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which I started in last video, in January's miscellaneous reading video, and I am about 50% of the way so far, and I really love it. It's been so amazing, but I'll give you an actual update once I'm a little farther and later on. But as I like to have a physical book and an audiobook going at the same time, the physical book that I'm going to be picking up alongside this audiobook is something that seems so silly. The Alpha's Son by Penny Jessup. So essentially, this book was recommended to me, I think, on Facebook, and Facebook, you know what? She knows my tastes and gave me this recommendation because it is a werewolf story, a romance, and a romance between 2 guys, let alone. So it's gonna be super gay. I love it. And essentially, this is, as the title may predict, or you may be able to predict from the title, the main character falls in love with the alpha, who is the leader of this werewolf pack, falls in love with his son. So essentially, what happens in here from the back of the book, so this is not spoilers. Also, I haven't started reading it, so I wouldn't really be able to provide spoilers. But essentially, the two characters meet up or go to this kind of summer camp, I guess, where people who are at the ripe age of, I don't know, probably like 16, 17, 18, go to the summer camp. All, werewolves go to this summer camp. And it is supposed to be a time for them all to be together and for them to find their mate. And so essentially, the two main characters, the alpha's son and the main character, I think find out that they're each other's mates or have these feelings for each other, but the alpha's son is actually a complete jerk and is terrible and mean. And so the main character, who is supposed to be his mate, has difficulty with that and has to kind of grapple with this. Well, this is my mate, but he's kind of being a jerk. I'm guessing that there's more to him, and maybe his abrasive personality is a front for protecting the soft, gushy insides, but we'll see how it turns out. So another little short book, but I'm very excited to start reading this alongside the wonderful Last Night at the Telegraph Club. So I'm excited to bring you along on this journey this month, and I think last month I mainly just included updates about the books that I was reading and if I bought new books, but this month I think interspersed in there I'm also going to include some clips of different activities that I'm doing this month, and maybe specifically include some gay stuff throughout this month. So I hope you stick around and see what books we get up to. Cody, wave. Cider. Hi, sweet girl. Hi, Miss Cider. Well, meet our new cat, everyone. We have this tradition of getting a cat every year on our anniversary, but it's gonna stop after this year because this is the third one. But meet our sweet little girl, Miss Cider. Cider, look at the camera. Cider. Oh, so cute. So this whole month, I keep forgetting, even though I'm reading LGBT romances and wanting to make a reading vlog out of it, I keep forgetting to actually record clips updating you on what I'm thinking, what I'm reading, thinking while I'm reading. So while I prep some of this produce and do some meal prepping, because I've been craving soups, so I'm gonna make 2 different soups and throw some in the freezer. So I'm gonna make corn chowder and then also a potato leek soup. And while I cut up all the veggies and stuff, what I figured I would do is multitask and update you on the books that I have been reading. So, my list of things that I need to update you on. Last Night at the Telegraph Club, because I don't believe I finished that in the last reading vlog, and it's queer, and I think I finished it this month, so I'm gonna just update you on that. It's been a while. We've gone to California already, we've gotten another cat. A lot has happened since I last checked in. So I'm gonna check in about Last Night at the Telegraph Club, talk about how far I am in the Alpha's Son, and then also talk about another audiobook that I started right after Last Night at the Telegraph Club, which is called The Music of What Happens by Bill something. I cannot remember his last name, but it'll be up here when I put the book in while I'm talking about it. So let's jump into it. So essentially, I'll start with Last Night at the Telegraph Club. So while I was reading Last Night at the Telegraph Club, I was absolutely loving it. And all the way through to the end, I absolutely adored this book. It was so amazing. I feel like it talked about so many different topics that are really poignant. And, you know, during the whole thing, they were talking about not only like queer identity, but they were also talking about different like race and ethnicities. Well, they were mostly focused on like Asian American folks, being that the main character, Lily, I think was her name, she is Chinese American. And during this book, it is set kind of during, I think it was the 50s, when the Red Scare was going on, which I already talked about in my last video, so you can go check on that. But essentially, I loved this book because it talked about all of these identities and the various ways in which our main character, Lily, had to hide or change who she was or worry about what people would think or what people would do to her based on her identities. And the part that I thought was really, I mean, it was a really hard book to read. These things were really hard to read, and sad to know that like people have gone through these things in the past. But also, what's even was sadder about the book is that a lot of the themes that they talked about are still going on today. You know, even with COVID and everything, we had a giant increase in the United States on, and I think maybe other places, but especially in the United States, on hate crimes against Asian Americans. And it was just due to similar ignorance of people blaming COVID on Asian Americans, even if, you know, they were born here in America and grew up their whole lives here and have never been to China. And, you know, with our last president, I hate calling him that, but with all the stuff that he did at the border with deporting families, separating families, and all the terrible rhetoric around those things, as well as all the attacks on queer people, you know, drag queen bans and sports bans for trans kids and all these things, that it just is wild to me that this book is set so long ago, but yet we're still going through these same things. And it was just a really, really nice read to see about those things, but also I think all of those topics were handled really well, and I just really enjoyed this book. It was a 5-star read for me, and honestly, probably going to be one of the best books I read this year, even though we're still very early on in the year. So, moving on from that, kind of at a similar time as I was finishing that, I was starting and reading The Alpha Sun, which I think I did a little bit of an update clip about what I was thinking, but I have read quite a bit more. I am about 3/4 of the way through it, and it is super cute. I think that essentially what the story is about, and I think I kind of already said it, but there is a boy who goes off to this summer camp with his friend, and they are both werewolves, and essentially this camp is where all the young werewolves go to hang out and participate in this, it's called a mating run, I think, or something like that, but essentially it's, all of these kids are going on a run through the forest to find their mates, because, you know, they're kind of like destiny, they're kind of linked, and when you find you might or you might not find your mate on this run. But essentially, the main character is on this run, and this might be a little bit spoiler territory, so I'll put a little spoiler border around me waving this knife all around. People are probably so scared. So anyway, they go on this run, and the main character, what is his name? I haven't read it in oh my gosh, it's Max. That's so funny. Max and Jasper, which is actually really interesting because the other book that I'm listening to, audiobook, the names of the main characters are Max and Jordan. So anyway, Max essentially couldn't care less about going on this run. He doesn't want to do it. He doesn't care about finding his mate, even though his best friend is obsessed with finding her mate. And I think is kind of convinced that Max is going to be her mate, which doesn't ultimately work out because my main dude, Max, is gay. So anyway, they do this run, and during the run, Max actually figures out that his mate is this guy who has kind of been a jerk to him multiple times now, who he finds out is actually the son of the Alpha, who is the leader of this werewolf pack. And so he's like, big deal, and essentially the Alpha is kind of like the president. So this is like the president's son, who also is kind of in denial about Max being his mate or about being gay. Don't really know, but essentially he freaks out and then yeets out of there. And so we kind of have, at this point in the book, finished up this story camp, or this camp, and everyone has gone home, and the main character, Max, is just sitting there like, what do I do? I still really like this boy, even though he's kind of a jerk. Like, how am I gonna get over this? I had no closure. And so essentially, I have no idea where this book is going to go from here. I'm thinking they're going to get closure or something, but the summer camp was just such a fun setting, and I loved that. And they were kind of forced to be around each other. But now, since like wolves come from all over New York or something to go to this camp, I don't even know where Jordan lives. I think in New York City, but New York City's big. And so I don't know how they're going to meet up. But all in all, it's been very cute so far. I've really enjoyed the characters, and it's been really cute. It's definitely a little bit of a younger read, or feels like it, like with the writing, but it's been very cute so far. So I'm enjoying that. Okay, so let's move on. I thought I wasn't gonna have enough potatoes or things to cut up and be prepped while I talked about these books, but I am going through these book updates fast. Probably because I know as soon as I finish this clip, I am going to put back on my audiobook, which I am loving. So this audiobook that I started after last night at the Telegraph Club is called The Music of What Happens. I don't know why it's called that, because the title doesn't make much sense with what the book has actually been about so far. But essentially, so we've got our two main characters. There is Max, who is a Latino guy, and then there's Jordan, who I think is a white guy, and they both are gay, and they each have their own respective friend groups. Max is kind of sold to us as this like dude bro type, and they literally keep calling him a dude bro throughout the entire thing. But he is told to us that he's this dude bro type, and throughout the chapters, because they flip back and forth between the two main characters, we hear a lot about him and his inner monologue of trying to like hide his feelings and kind of shut them down, and really kind of this like machismo stereotype or kind of like thing of trying to be tough and strong, but also this like toxic masculinity of like boys can't have these feelings, or boys just need to toughen up, which is in stark contrast to our other main character, Jordan, who is a very sensitive, very like stereotypical. I feel like everyone kind of pegs him as gay, even, you know, before they find out that he is, and he's kind of what people think of as like what being gay means. But so he's kind of a little more emotional and has some anxiety, some really bad insecurities, and he also just constantly like thinks poorly of himself, all the things. He's very into like music, but not so much so that would justify the title of the book. But he's very into music, he's very into writing and poems and different things like that. And actually, the other main character that I just talked about, Max, he's actually really into drawing and gets back into drawing because of Jordan. But so essentially, how the plot unfolds is that Jordan also lost his dad, and his mom has her own like mental health struggles, and I think she like has addictions to gambling and different things. And so after the dad dies, she kind of has a really tough time taking care of the both of them and working. But so essentially what they decide to do, the mom and Jordan, is they decide to revive this food truck that their dad used to run. But on the first day, his mom kind of has a freak out and can't do it. And my cats are messing around, knocking things over. So essentially, Max is there at the food truck and sees this and offers to volunteer or help and work there, not volunteer. He wants to get paid because he wants to do it instead of this other office job that I think was at an insurance company or something. But so he wants to work there and offers to help them out. And so he joins, and essentially the mom just kind of disappears. Not disappears, but she does not help out with this food truck. So it is on these two teenage boys to figure out all the permits, everything you have to run or do to like run a food truck. And I think all of that is kind of in the synopsis, so I don't think any of that is spoilers. But essentially, I feel like I say this every video, and I feel like it's my catchphrase, but hijinks ensue. And basically, now is where I'll probably get into a little bit of spoilery. But before I do, I will just say I am loving this book, and I actually cannot put it down. I was listening to it right before doing this, and I want to finish this clip so I can go right back and start listening to it again. But it's very adorable, and I think both the main characters are really great. The only problem that I have is that the narrator for Jordan, this is kind of mean, I feel like. I have just been really annoyed or off-put because a lot of times I get that Jordan is supposed to be this like anxious, kind of nervous person, insecure, but a lot of times when the narrator is reading some of Jordan's chapters, it sounds like his voice is like quivering every single sentence, which is like, I don't know if that's intentional, but it just really throws me off to have every single sentence of this character be with this quivering voice. The other thing that I don't particularly enjoy, and I think it's a function of listening to the audiobook, is that throughout the story there is a lot of kind of like mixed media, or what I think. So it's like showing us the poem that was actually written or text messages between the characters, and it just gets really disorienting having the way it's read with every single like punctuation mark read out and things like that. And so that's throwing me off. I also really don't like Jordan's friends. So Jordan is friends with these two girls, and they are totally like, I feel like they're mean girls. They're not really fleshed out. I can't really tell them apart. They are so nonchalant and kind of like rude. And also I feel like they're kind of rude to Jordan, which like really upsets me because I don't think that the story is going to have commentary on how kind of rude they are. And it just doesn't feel like those characters are fully fleshed out to me. And it also makes me sit here and think like, if this character is named Bill, which I'm going off of stereotypes here, I could look this up, but if his name is Bill and the author, his name is Bill and he's a man, like, my guy, you gotta figure out how to write female characters, because these are not good. I get that they're not the main characters, but they're just, I don't really like these characters. So anyway, those are my initial thoughts on, actually, I say initial thoughts, but I'm like 75% of the way through the book, actually more like 60. So I don't know that that's gonna change much. But overall, I really do like the kind of storyline and the way the characters are developing. I like that they are making changes, which I don't think you should have to change to be in a relationship, but I think they're really healthily growing. These two characters like are growing alongside each other and really impacting each other. And because they're so opposite, I feel like they fit together really well and compensate for like where one character is more shy and nervous and insecure, the other character is constantly saying, no, you don't have to be insecure about anything. I love you for you. I want to be here. If I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be here. And trying to like help out with some of that stuff. I also, this book talks about some like heavy topics. In particular, one of them is, and I think actually it's the most heavy topic that's come up in the book. I'll just put a timestamp for the spoilers. So if you want to skip ahead, skip to this timestamp and you'll pass the spoilers for this book. But so essentially, I feel like it's a very common situation where one person will kind of say no and the other person doesn't take that as a no, and the person who is like sexually assaulted feels really guilty because they didn't say no, or they didn't do more to fight this person off, or maybe they started off enjoying it and kind of wanted it but didn't want it partway through, or didn't enjoy it, or ultimately just didn't want it, which is not full consent. If you say no, or if you are not wanting this, if you are not giving someone an enthusiastic yes, then it's not consent. And so this main character is saying like, oh, well, I'm bigger than this guy who like sexually assaulted me. I didn't say no enough. I didn't get out of there. I could have fought back. He didn't really like, there wasn't much violence. And then this guy, ooh, he makes me so mad. The guy who did this, not only because he did this and didn't like get full consent, but also because then they meet up later in the book and he's telling the main character, he's saying, oh, but you liked it. You were turned on during it. I know you're just shy. And so I bet you even want it again. And just completely is a terrible human being. And so that really, it frustrates me, but I think it was really important to have this conversation because I think lots of people have gone through experiences like this and have difficulty coming to terms with the fact that maybe this wasn't okay, or it wasn't their fault, or it actually was rape or sexual assault. And so I think the author has done a really good job of exploring that and talking about it and the impact that has had on one of the main characters. So all in all, I feel like this book is just very fleshed out. So much so that like how I judge a audiobook on how much I like it and like how good it is if I want to like immediately go pick up the physical copy, even though I've already read it after listening to the audiobook. And this definitely, depending on how it shapes up, seems like something that I immediately would want to get. Or at some point want to get the audiobook or the physical book for and put it on my shelves because I really enjoy this book so far. So those are my updates. I'm going to keep cooking along. I'm going to listen to my audiobook, more of the music of what happens. And then I will be back to update you probably when we finish some of these books, both the Alpha Sun and the music of what happens. And I'm really hoping to at least start another physical book and start another audiobook before the month is out, which is not too far away, but I'm gonna make it happen. So I will see you next when we check in. Why is your foot doing that?
Getting her belly warm.
Gotta make sure your belly's all warm against the fire. So I finished the music of what happens, and you know me, always gotta have my little cheat sheet, so I got my thoughts organized. So I had 3 final things to say after my last check-in, and that I thought as we ended the book. So all in all, I loved this book. It was a 5-star read for me. So good. But let's talk about my ups and my downs with it towards the end. So towards the end, I really enjoyed, actually it was funny, right after the last clip that I filmed, I started listening to it again like I said I was going to, and then all of a sudden the music stuff happened, or the parts of the book happened that explained why the title is what the title is. And in that last clip, I had literally said, I don't know why, this title makes no sense, and so I don't know why it's here, and then it immediately explained it. But anyway, my gripe with that is that the title and this like focus on music only happened at the very end of the book, so it felt very strange and out of place and felt kind of forced, or like if that's what Bill was hoping to do, the author was hoping to do the whole time, I wish it would have been more integrated earlier on, because I did not, none of it came to fruition until the very end of the book. Now, something else that I didn't particularly like too much was, towards the end of the book, the guy friend group, like throughout the story, both of the friend groups, the like two guys who are friends with Max, and then the two girls who are friends with Jordan, both of the friend groups have their own kinds of dynamics and things that aren't the best, and things that could be changed, or things that are kind of problematic. And towards the end of the book, the guy friend group, the two guys who are friends with Max, have this really nice moment, and these like moments of growth where their characters are changing and they're kind of being called out for the things that were kind of like problematic, and they like fix those things, and like it's a very sweet moment, very open. They open up and they kind of deconstruct this like toxic masculinity that is throughout the book. But the girl friend group, like the two girls who are friends with Jordan, never got that. There was like a quick moment where Jordan, as he's narrating, was kind of like, oh yeah, I talked to them about it and we're cool now. And that was it. We didn't get to see that moment. We didn't get to see any growth, which I think frustrated me a lot, because those two girls are the ones that I had the most conflict with throughout reading this, or like I just didn't like so much, and just kind of wished that they were more fleshed out characters, and that they weren't just like these stereotypes of what like girls are. So that kind of frustrated me. But all in all, I really loved this book, and the most special part of it was towards the end when both of the main characters, Max and Jordan, are still, you know, in this relationship and navigating it. But throughout that, there's no really big like fight between them. That a lot of times in romance books, there will be, you know, the kind of formula is that they start off getting to know each other, then they start dating, but then something happens, and then there's a big fight, and they like go their separate ways. They might break up, but then they ultimately come back together. But with this book, it was really nice because conflict and like third act like conflict and tension and, you know, the big pieces of plot happened, but it was, each of them had their own thing going on in their lives that was like that they were having to deal with, and through it they supported each other and used this new relationship and this newfound kind of partnership and love to lean on each other and help the other person navigate through that and get through those moments, which was very sweet and very so like wholesome. And it also felt nice to have a queer narrative that kind of broke that mold and was really focused on, I feel like this whole book was really focused on characters and character growth and development, and characters wrestling with really tough things and growing through that and facing their vulnerabilities and like challenges and growing. And so I really liked that, and I liked that, you know, this book was so focused on how people can connect and support each other through really difficult times. So I absolutely loved it, and I definitely, if I see a copy of it out and about in the world, I'm going to pick it up immediately. So the next audiobook that I started is, I think, I'm going off of memory here, I think it's called Some Girls Do, but essentially, I'll obviously have the little book art over here and with the title and author, and I'll get it right for the next clip check-in. But essentially that has been so cute, so cute so far. And we have our main characters, who are these two girls, and so it's a sapphic story. It's got a lot of representation. One of the girls, I believe, identifies as lesbian, one of them as bisexual, at least from the, like, excerpt on the back of the book, it says that. And they each, again, just like the story I just listened to on audiobook, The Music of What Happens, they each have their own kind of lives and their own kind of struggles that are going on. And that's nice to see, fully fleshed out characters. And I think I'm really gonna like it. I'm enjoying it so far. And I don't think I really have too many qualms with it so far. No, I think it's pretty good. And there's lots of representation. One of the girls is in like a queer friend group, and so there's lots of different identities represented. I hope that those characters are more fleshed out too. I have a feeling they're not going to be that fleshed out, but hopefully they will be. So we'll see where it goes, and I definitely will update all of you as we go along. So I'm going to get back to reading, and I'll see you at the next check-in. I have an update for you just before the end of the month here. So I finished Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan, and I also finished The Alpha's Son. So talking about Some Girls Do first off. So I ended up rating this book a 4 stars out of 5, and I really enjoyed it because, well, so for the most part, I really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed it because I think it really talked about community and also isolation and feeling cut off from people. And I think that it had lots of nuanced conversations about those things. The one thing around those topics that I didn't love, or it was just hard to read about, or yeah, I just had a difficult time with it. It was that, and spoilers, so if you want, you can skip ahead, and I'll put the timestamp up here that you should skip to. But the main characters essentially go through this whole thing, and one of them isn't out and wants to keep their relationship a secret. And that is always a really hard thing for me to wrestle with, because on one hand, I don't think you should pressure people to come out, but I also think about it from the point of the person who is out and who for a long time had to hide, and they're ready to be out and they want to experience that joy and they want to have that in their life. And I think I get that you shouldn't have to come out, but I think it is also kind of a little bit selfish to ask the other person to, or get mad at the other person if that's not what they want to do. I think that's my ultimate take on it, is that if you are still in the closet and you are interested in someone, dating someone, and you ask them to keep your relationship a secret, or if you want to keep them a secret, then you can't get mad at that person if that's not what they want, if they want to live their life out and proud. And so this story, it was just a little hard hearing some of the messaging towards the end that almost made it seem like, and ultimately I think it was the main character's decision, it was Morgan's decision, because she was the one who was out, and it was her decision about like if she wanted to stay in this relationship or not. But some of the messages from the other people in the book were kind of pushing her towards, no, like if you love her, you should be with her. Like, who cares if you have to stay hidden? Like, it's more about love. And I don't know that I necessarily agreed or that's the advice I would have given her. But ultimately, in the end, I think they were both very happy and made the right decisions for them. And so I did really like it. So moving on to the other book that I finished The Alpha's Son, and I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. So I gave it 3.5 because there was not really any payoff. And again, spoilers are coming up. So let me see if there's anything. I always take little notes, so I need to see if there's anything that I can say that isn't spoilers. Okay, there is one thing that I can say before we get to the spoilery stuff. So, one thing that really bothered me throughout the entire book is that a lot of the lingo and a lot of the kind of turn of phrase and words that were used very much gave me like UK British vibes. And this book is set in New York, the state of New York, I think, and the two main characters, I don't think either of them is from the UK. Both of them, I believe, are American. It's never really talked about if they are or aren't, but essentially in the chapters, throughout the book, they use words that are not super common in America, or just like references, like saying the queue instead of waiting in line, or saying the bin instead of the trash, or things like that. And it's a very minor thing. I tried to look it up. I don't know if the author is from the UK or lived there or what. I'm guessing so. I couldn't really find anything indicating whether that was the case or not. But essentially that just really threw me off because it was supposed to be set in New York. So now I'm going to talk about the spoilery parts. So skip to this timestamp if you don't want to hear the spoilers. So essentially this book, I rated it lower because it didn't really have payoff for me. You know, I wanted some character growth and I thought the characters would grow, but they didn't. There was many moments where I was like, oh, it's finally happening. The characters are growing and changing. And then they would immediately turn back to their old habits, particularly Jasper shutting down Max and not wanting to be in a relationship with him, and Max chasing after Jasper. And it was just really sad to read because the whole time Max is just pining over Jasper and fighting so hard for this relationship, and Jasper just doesn't want it and is a jerk the whole time. And even at the end, he makes this big long speech where you feel like, okay, maybe after the whirlwind of events that happened throughout the book, maybe he's finally ready. You know, his dad is accepting of the relationship. Maybe he's finally ready to say yes and try things out, or even just move a little bit in that direction. And he makes this big speech and then says, but we can't be together. And I get that this book was not meant to be a standalone book. I know there's a second book coming that follows up on this book, but it was really unsatisfying because we ultimately end the book with Max just being like, well, he doesn't want me, but I will continue chasing after him and show him that I will be there, which has been the whole book. So it didn't really feel like any progress was made, didn't feel like anything was gonna change, and it just was really sad and hard to read. Again, that these people don't want to, that Jasper was being a jerk and didn't want to be in this relationship. And so for that reason, I gave it a 3.5. But since it's the end of the month, I did start another book that I had reserved the audiobook for, but I'm probably not going to be able to talk about it before I post this video. And the month of February is wrapping up. Not that that means I'm going to stop reading LGBTQA+ romance, but I did start A Dowry of Blood, which I think is a queer reimagining of Dracula, or just talking about the wives of Dracula. And so it's supposed to be sapphic, I think. So I'm very excited. And so far I'm really liking it. I think I'm an hour into the audiobook, which it's only 5 hours. So, but I'm really liking the narrative style and how it's kind of written, of this person, Dracula's original wife, kind of reflecting back on her life and writing down this history so she doesn't forget it, and so she gets to tell her side. And I really enjoy that. It's hooked me right away. The writing is very much like, here's what I thought at the time, but little did I know this is how it would be in the end. And so you want to keep listening and keep reading and keep hearing what's about to happen or what's going to unfold over the course of this story. So I'm very excited for that. But I think tomorrow I'm going to go, as a little treat for myself to wrap up this video, I am going to go book shopping. And so I will probably insert some footage of me book shopping, and then I will come back to talk to you about any books that I happen to pick up. And we know I'm gonna pick up books. I'm not even gonna pretend like I'm not going to. There's always a book that catches my eye. But I'm gonna hopefully make sure they focus on queer romance, and so that way I can restock my to be read shelf after this month of reading. I'll see you then. I'm so excited to show you. So I inserted a little bit of footage from the book shopping adventure. Now, I didn't want to actually film. That's a lie. I did film. I didn't want to talk during the recordings. I just wanted to grab a couple clips because I was hanging out with my partner. We met up to go to the Barnes & Noble and to get a little coffee date and then go book shopping in between some things that he had going on. And so I wanted to come back and talk to you and update you on what books I actually ended up getting. So I let myself get 2 books, and these sound so cute and so up my alley. I'm so excited for them. So the first one is called Back in a Spell by Lana Harper. And, oh, I didn't even realize that this is the author of Payback's a Witch, which I believe I read. And actually, do I have it on my shelves? I feel like I might have it on my shelves. I can't see it from here, but I think it's maybe on my shelves. So, A Witches of Thistle Grove. Hold on. Wait a minute. Okay, let me read you what this book is about. And I didn't read much about it in the bookstore. I just grabbed it because I read a little bit, saw a couple things, and was like, oh, this is amazing. I need to read this. So it says, even though she won't deny her love for pretty and pricey things, Nynaeve Blackmore is almost painfully down to earth and sensible by Blackmore standards. But after a year of nursing a broken heart inflicted by the fiancé who all but ditched her at the altar, the powerful witch is sick of feeling low and is ready to try something drastically different. A dating app. At her best friend's urging, Nina goes on a date with Morty Gutierrez, the non-binary offbeat soul of spontaneity and a co-worker of the Shamrock Cauldron. She doesn't have high hopes for an online date, and it goes about as well as she expected. Awkward and terrible. To make matters worse, once Morty discovers Nina's last name, he's far from a fan. It turns out that the Blackmores have been bullishly trying to buy the Shamrock out from under Morty and his family. But when Morty begins developing magical powers, something that usually only happens to committed romantic partners once they officially join a founding family, at the same time that Nina's own magic surges beyond her control, Nina must manage Morty's rude awakening to the hidden magical world, uncover its cause, and face the intensity of their burgeoning connection. But what happens when that connection is tied to Nina's power surge, a power she's finding nearly as addictive as Morty's presence in her life? Wow, that sounds incredible. We've got the non-binary representation. We've got the witchy representation, which I love me a witchy book. I am trying so hard to think about, because I've read so many like witchy rom-com books, I'm trying to think about what happens in Payback's a Witch. And I think 2 sisters cast a curse on... No, maybe that's a different book. I'm going to have to go look it up after this. But anyway, very excited. I honestly might pick this up next because it sounds so cute and I need to read it. I need it in my life. So the other one that I picked up is called Sorry Bro by Talene Voskuni. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. So first off, this cover, absolutely gorgeous. I don't know why I still hold it up there when I usually put the book up here anyway. But this looks so cute. And it says that when Nari Bedrosian's non-American boyfriend gets down on one knee and proposes to her in front of a room full of drunk San Francisco tech bros, she realizes it's time to find someone who shares her idea of romance. Enter her mother. Armed with plenty of mom guilt and a spreadsheet of Facebook-stalked Armenian men, she convinces Nar to attend Explore Armenia, a month-long series of events in the city. But it's not the mom-approved playboy doctor or the wealthy engineer who catches Nar's eye. It's Erebuni, a woman as immersed in the witchy arts as she is in preserving Armenian identity. Suddenly, when Erebuni, as her wingwoman, With Erebuni as her wingwoman, the events feel like far less of a chore and much more of an adventure. Who knew cooking up kuftes together could be so sexy? Erebuni helps Nar see the beauty of their shared culture and makes her feel understood in a way that she never has before. But there's one teeny problem. Nar's not exactly out as bisexual. The clock is ticking on her double life. The Explore Armenia closing banquet is coming up, and her entire extended family will be there, along with Erebuni. Nar's worlds will inevitably collide, but she is determined to be brave and to claim her happiness. Proudly Armenian, proudly bisexual, and proudly herself for the first time in her life. So that just sounds amazing. We've got different cultures represented, which I always love reading about. We've got kind of this friends to lovers, I think, trope that's going to be happening. Obviously, these queer storylines and coming out, and I am just, it sounds so fun. And also, I need to know more about how much they're going to explore this, how much Erebuni is immersed in the witchy arts. So, as you can see, I bought 2 queer witchy books, maybe one more so than the other, but I'm very excited to pick this one up as well. Well, that's going to do it for us. So let me know down in the comments if you've made it this far. If you like reading vlogs that are more kind of in theme like this, or if you prefer when they're just kind of all over the place so you get more variety than just one genre. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you all have to think and if there's any books that you've been reading lately that you've fallen in love with. But until next time, stay grounded.